What's up, guys? You know it. Let's talk Lua. Okay, so there was some confusion regarding some of the concepts explained in the last video, so I wanted to try to clear some of those questions up. First and foremost, with regards to functions, you must understand that the function is not run by the computer. There's a distinction between running and reading, in my vernacular at any rate. Reading is where the computer will, yes, read this section of the script that you've written. However, it will not execute it, or I should say running. It will not run. It will not run this section of the script. It is a function, and so therefore it is like you've defined a variable such as a equals 1. The computer simply acknowledges it, reads that, and it puts that information into memory. Now, in the case of a, if you want to see it, you simply print a. And that seems fairly intuitive. We're printing a, and we know in our head a is not simply the letter a, but it has some sort of value inside, like a box, right? Well, just like variables, functions are a variable type. You just call the function simply by typing out its name and then open and close parentheses. That is how, instead of saying a for a regular variable, to call a function, you just have to strap on those two extra little the parentheses. Now, what does that function hold? Like a held 1, right? Very simple. But what does a function hold? And then what would it even give back to you? I mean, so it holds quite a bit of stuff, but what would it return, if you will? When we call a, it returns 1, simply. It's just simple, right? But a function, what does it return? Well, you can literally look for the word return to find out. And in this function, it's returning n. And you just follow up through the code to see what is n, where does it come from? And we see that here some arithmetic is being done on n, and ultimately it's coming from here. That is the starting point of n. So I'm going to try and I just grabbed that section of the screen to draw something out for you. So first of all, the computer will read each of these lines and it'll say, okay, I understand what you're trying to do. And then, so those 1 through 5 are simply being stored into memory. It's just storing it in boxes, putting it into boxes, putting it on a shelf. And then it comes down here and it gets to the print function. And the print function then says, hey, I want you to go open up the box called func and do whatever it's supposed to do. So that's when the computer accesses its memory. But you could also think of this as being like the line of code jumping up to here and then hopping back through these 4 lines of code, after which, once it is done with this function, it jumps all the way back down here. So that is how you could imagine it. Now, it's technically not like that because this function is stored in memory. So the code would literally just go this, and then, hey, I know func, and then it goes and it accesses that box called, func, and reads it, does whatever's in that box, which was created right here, right? This is where the func was created, and then it goes and accesses that box, and it moves on. So, but hopefully that kind of gives some clarity to functions. And how, yes, they are before everything else, but they're not run until they're actually called. very much like the variables, such as this one right here. It's not run, it doesn't get output to the screen or anything until you actually call it. And I will reiterate that when you call function, if you're wanting to know what the function returns, look for return. Now, there are instances where a function won't have the word return, in which case it doesn't actually return anything. And I think that's completely valid in Lua. So what in the world is the use of functions? Based off of this script, there is no use of functions because this is absolutely way overkill if you're just trying to multiply a number by 2. This is, of course, for demonstration purposes only. Let me show you here what I've done in Pirate's Cove. So in Pirate's Cove, I have written out a bunch of code. You can see that from line 8 to 113, so that's roughly 100 lines of code, is stuffed inside of these functions. That's a lot of code to look at. Let's look at just Tortuga, and not too complicated. Purchase. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. It's confusing. It can make reading and looking at code very confusing. And so, therefore, I tuck it all away underneath these various functions, and then I come down here, and this is the whole game loop. The entire game loop is very, very easy to read and understand. Now, if you're trying to figure out what does Tortuga do, you could go up here, right? So that's the first function. You could go up here, and you could open up Tortuga and read Tortuga, and then once you're done with that, you can just close it up. So functions allow you to pack a whole bunch of code into a single line, and that is a very, very powerful thing for a number of reasons, but in my case, for readability. The other one that just comes to mind is that you don't have to write the same line or lines of code over and over and over. All you have to do is define it one place, and then you can call it several times. For instance, here we have CLS, which is the clear screen function that I wrote. And instead of having to write the lines, which I'll show you the lines, these are all the lines, just 2, not that much. But instead of having to write those 2 lines over and over and over and over, I simply summarize it in a function that I've defined. Last thing that I wanted to quickly cover is passing numbers or information into a function. Now, this is done by entering something inside of these parentheses. For instance, a 3, it could be text. It could be a wide variety of things. You can also do multiple inputs. We haven't really gotten into that, but it's simply using a comma and separating them. And then over here in the function, you grab those. Whenever the function is called, it takes those numbers or whatever you've passed into it and assigns it a name, a variable name, and that is done right here. And so let's say that you were doing multiple variables. You would use that comma in there to separate them. They would each have a unique name. However, we're just dealing with one right now, and so to have this written out correctly, let's throw something into the func. And then this case, that 4 would assume the variable name n, and then I can call that number and right here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly write out some print functions so that you can see on the command line exactly where the computer is and what it is executing. So bear with me. Now this is very important that you watch, okay? So watch very carefully. You'll notice that the first print says in function. The next print says after function. And then the final print says after call. And so what I'm saying is after calling the function. And so if we save this and head over to this and run it, we can see here that the very first print is after function. So we look over here at our code and we notice that that is line 7. Strange, right? Not really, if you understand the process here. However, it has printed this line before printing this line. I wonder why. Then it says in function. That's interesting. So then it jumps up here, prints this function, and then prints 8, and then it finally prints after call. Well, this makes a lot of sense if you understand functions. It reads the function, puts it away in memory, comes down here, prints this this to the screen, and then it accesses function, in which case it opens up function, reads it, and executes everything inside. One of those lines being print in function to the screen. Once it's done, it closes up function, heads back on down after this to this line, and then prints after call. So hopefully that kind of gives you some idea of how the computer is processing each line of our script. Okay, guys, brace yourself. Here is your test grade for today. I want you to write out a script that includes a function which tests to see if the user has entered in apples, oranges, or bananas. And like I said, the user enters in. So you're going to write a function. You're then going to need to write out a print that says, please select apples, oranges, or bananas. Then you're going to need to call the function, and be sure to have the user input some information before or while you're calling that function, so that the person can enter in a banana, apple, or orange. And then the function it'll jump up to the function and then check to see which one. And that's using, of course, an if statement. So that's the test grade for today. I hope it goes well. Thanks for watching, guys.